terms of just stability and predictability. So I think that's one reason why, just the more recent interest. I think the second is, there's obviously a slowdown that's happening in China, and I think for a lot of, particularly manufacturers, they're starting to see costs rise and being able to find human resources more and more difficult. The China Plus One strategy is something that many manufacturers have been talking about for years, but you're really starting to see it actually happening, and Vietnam has been a beneficiary to that, because again, what you have is really a young, very productive labor market, very low cost. So Vietnam, in that sense, is a very now attractive destination for particularly manufacturing. But I also think if you look at the general consumer economy, there's a lot more investments that are happening in infrastructure, real estate, and in all sorts of consumer-based sectors, including healthcare, education, and particularly media and technology.
And you brought in McDonald's, basically, into Vietnam.
The ultimate consumer brand.
Right. Last year, it opened its first branch. Now you have, 8 of
That's correct.
branches, right?
Yeah, so by the end of this year, we'll have 8 stores, and really.
How are they performing? How's the consumer in Vietnam responding to a Western brand, and especially an American brand?
McDonald's in Vietnam is a very aspirational brand. You have this emerging middle class. They've got increasing spending power, and it's really a family-driven restaurant. This is what we've always tried to position McDonald's as we came into the market, as the quintessential family restaurant, and also a place where young people can go and enjoy really what is kind of a taste of the West, or a taste of America. So in that sense, we always had high hopes and expectations, and we've been very happy. We've been able to exceed our expectations in terms of store counts, in terms of revenue, and we're very excited about really our plans ahead. It's really such an early part of the story, if I look at it from McDonald's perspective, but even in general, the whole consumer story in Vietnam.
You're invested in everything in Vietnam, from consumer to technology, media. Where do you see the fastest growth and the most potential?
That's hard to say when you kind of have a boat on sort of rising tides, which Vietnam is. I think there's such a plethora of opportunity across all sectors in Vietnam, whether you're talking about more traditionally based sectors like consumer and banking, finance, etc., but also from our perspective, a tremendous amount of change is happening thanks to technology. The smartphone revolution and the mobile revolution is happening everywhere in the world, but it's happening at even a particularly fast pace in Vietnam, and you have a young consumer market that is really rapid adopters of technology. So when we're talking about consumption of media, even retail behavior, in Vietnam you have traditional retailing that's growing up right beside e-commerce. So it's really going to have some real dynamic effects on the market.
And a key turning point for Vietnam in the next few years will also be the trade agreements, the ASEAN Economic Community. How is all that going to affect businesses there?
Vietnam has embarked on a strategy that started really even 2 decades ago of working hard to be open and integrate into the global economic community. In the last 5 years, a tremendous number of economic and trade agreements have been passed, whether within the ASEAN community, which also has been in the works for a long time, or with the EU, and now most recently the ratification of TPP. All of these,
quite a surprise there.
I think for a lot of outsiders, it was surprising just because of the stringent qualification requirements, and also many of the policy changes that will have to be enacted for Vietnam to really integrate into TPP. But I think it speaks to kind of really the leadership as they've really pushed forward to be more economically liberalized, lower these trade barriers, because in the long run, it's definitely going to be a net benefit for Vietnam.